Question number 9 asks us, which is a good first step in solving the equation in front of us? This is a recognition problem where you recognize the type of equation that you will get after you distribute or multiply your x plus 3 and x minus 2 together. This expression, if we use our FOIL, will create a quadratic equation. Like I said, it's almost one of those where you have to recognize it's like a sight problem where you see it and you know, here's my strategy to solve it. But I recognized early that it was a quadratic equation. The reason I recognize it's a quadratic equation is if I started doing the FOIL, I take x times x and get x squared. And I'll come back and finish FOIL in a moment. But anytime it's quadratic, one of the top priorities is getting it in standard form. Now standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c, and setting the other side equal to 0. And that gets us in a position to solve a quadratic. So the test is just asking you what is the first thing that you would do. Well, the first thing that we would do is multiply to remove those parentheses, and then we're going to be able to move the 14 over and collect our like terms so we get it set equal to 0. So the first step, and that's all they're looking for, is to go ahead and use your multiplication, your double distributive property, otherwise we can call it FOIL, to remove those parentheses so we can collect the like term 14. So illustration of FOIL. The first terms in each binomial is x times x, which we've said is x squared. The outermost two in the binomials would be taking a negative 2 times x, which is negative 2x. The innermost two in the binomials is positive 3 and x, so that's 3x. The last terms in each binomial is a positive 3 times a negative 2, which is a negative 6. That was set equal to 14. Our goal was to get it in standard form, so x squared minus, we want to collect those like terms before I forget. So we got a negative 2x and a positive 3x, that's going to be a positive x, collecting those like terms, minus 6 equals 14. And now I'm ready to move over the 14. So instead of leaving the 14 on the right side, I'm going to move it over here to the left. X squared plus x minus 20 equals 0. So this was our top priority, to get it equal to 0. In order to get it equal to 0, we had to perform FOIL. We had to use our double distributive property to get it into a form where we could bring the 14 over, and we could collect our like terms and get it set equal to 0. That's where they want us to stop, but at this point I'm just going to illustrate to get the solution to this. Factoring technique. We have factoring, or we have quadratic formula that we can utilize to solve this for x. Now we're going to distribute this, which a lot of times we'll call that factoring. The factoring is a reverse process of what we just did up here, the distributive property on FOIL. But we use the same analogy. The first term has to be x squared, so we want to make sure that the first terms in our binomials multiply together to get x squared. Then we key in on this sign in the back. If that last sign on the constant is negative, we know that our signs will have to be opposite signs, because when we multiply the last terms in our binomials, we want to make sure that we end up with a negative. The only way we get a negative is if we have a positive times a negative or opposite signs. Then I'm going to go to the 20. I'm going to utilize the factors of 20. Now 20 has several factors. We got 1 and 20. We have 2 and 10. We have 4 and 5. The combination that I'm going to use is 4 and 5, because if we use 4 and 5, then our outside insides are going to give us our positive x. So I want to put a 5 in this location and a 4 in this location. I'll illustrate why that's correct. We go with our outermost two and our innermost two, and we look at our products on those. The outermost two is a negative 4x. The innermost two is a positive 5x. These are the like terms that are give us our outside-inside term. That is a positive x, which checks out with the inside term of this. Okay, so I've got it factored correctly, so now what do I do to find our solutions? I want to try to utilize the zero factor theorem, which basically says you've got one number here, x plus 5, multiplied by a second number here, x minus 4, that equals 0. So the only way that we get an answer of 0 when we have a product or we multiply together is that for one of these two numbers to equal 0. So I can say I know that the x plus 5 equals 0, or the x minus 4 equals 0, or it could be that they both equal 0. But if we solve this for x, then x is equal to a negative 5, or our other option would be x equals a 4. And our final solutions, had they wanted them, would have been negative 5 and 4. And you can see if you plug a negative 5 in for the x up here, negative 5 plus 5 gives you 0, and 0 times anything, which in this case would be a negative 9, is still 0. And we could also take our positive 4, and if we put a positive 4 into this factor, 4 minus 4 is 0, and 0 times in this case would be a positive 9, is still 0. So kind of broke it down a little farther than I needed to go. The first step is to multiply and remove the parentheses, but I wanted to utilize this problem to help review how to solve a quadratic equation.